What are the implications of that indecision? I spoke earlier with climate policy analyst Paul Bledsoe, president of Bledsoe and Associates.
There are ideologues like Steve Bannon who are against essentially all international agreements. I believe, however, at the end of the day, the Trump administration will stay in the Paris Agreement because not to do so, to leave the agreement, would irritate leaders around the world, ruin U.S. diplomatic and moral standing, and really be a thumb in the eye to all the nations around the world who negotiated this agreement. You know, the truth of the matter is that climate change has become a leading measure of moral standing in the world, the ability to protect our economies, our security, our poor. And the U.S. has shown that it can do this. Under President Obama, the U.S. economy grew 15%, while emissions of CO2 fell 12%. So the U.S. economy has shown a remarkable ability to decarbonize, and world leaders need to let Trump know that the U.S. economy can grow even while we cut emissions.
We've also heard words like not necessarily pulling out of the Paris Climate Agreement, but renegotiating some aspects of that deal. So, Paul, what are the parts of this agreement that the Trump administration has issues with?
You're exactly right. That's what I think is going to happen. I think they're going to technically stay in the agreement and then abjure and say they're not going to comply with any of the actual provisions of the agreement.
So which provisions do they take issue with?
They are especially uncomfortable with the U.S. pledge to reduce emissions 26 to 28% below 2005 levels by 2025. I believe they'll repudiate that effort. There is reason to believe the U.S. will not make that pledge without additional policies, although I think we'll come closer than many other people think. They'll also criticize China's pledge. China's pledge is to cap emissions by 2030. In fact, the Chinese economy is decarbonizing much more quickly than that. There are a lot of people that believe that China will take a stronger target in 2020. The other thing they'll criticize is the Global Climate Fund, which is a $10 billion fund, which is supposed to expand to $100 billion. I don't believe they'll give the U.S. $3 billion toward that fund, and they'll criticize the lack of transparency and direction in it.
And Paul, I have to ask you about China's role. You mentioned China. It has really taken a remarkable lead when it comes to fighting global climate change. And with Trump's position, with this administration's position, or what appears to be a lack of priority, China could take on an even bigger role and fill that vacuum. Talk to us a little bit about that.
This is a race to occupy the biggest economic sector in human history, which is clean energy globally. We're talking about tens of trillions of dollars in market share a year. The Chinese are making big investments, but so is U.S. private industry. We have to note that CEOs around the United States know that carbon constraints are inevitable. They're betting on clean technology too. California's been an incredible leader. This is really a race to the cleanest energy around the world, and it's an economic race. I think world leaders have to educate Trump, and American business leaders have to educate Trump that this is an economic as well as a security opportunity and risk.
And at the end of the day, it's also about protecting the planet we live on.
And our security. The impacts from climate change are beginning to affect security around the world, the livelihoods of farmers, water supply, many other issues.
Paul Bledsoe, a pleasure, sir. Thank you.
Nice to see you.